Good evening. My name is Elena, and today I invite you to listen to the Arab fairy tale, The Blacksmith Bazim, before bed. I wish you a pleasant listening experience and sweet, restful dreams. So many tales have been woven about the times of Caliph Harun al-Rashid, as there are stars shining in the night sky. Just as the stars shine down on us from afar, so do fairy tales take us back to distant times. One of them tells the story of how one day the Caliph, troubled by the fruitlessness of his efforts, and falling into despair because of it, called for his vizier named Jafar and asked for advice. The vizier thoughtfully stroked his beard for a few minutes, and then he spoke. We need to go there, where there is no place for sadness and gloomy thoughts. Let's dress in simple clothes and go among the people. Something amusing might happen, and we'll shake off this gloom. Harun gladly agreed. Accompanied by the executioner, Masroor, the three of them set off to wander through the narrow, quiet corners of Baghdad. They wandered like this until the evening breeze brought to their ears someone's carefree little song. How do you shine in my glass and spill over with all the colors? I drink again in the sun. Around the corner, they saw a small house with a rectangular courtyard. In the lit window, the silhouette of a person with a cup in hand flickered. That's where I'll heal from my bad mood, said the Caliph. Masroor, tell them to open the door. Masroor knocked on the door, and immediately a huge head popped out of the window. The stranger shouted, What's the matter, wanderers? What do you want? The Caliph barely suppressed his laughter. We are merchants, and we want to rest a bit in your house. The head disappeared, and a minute later, the owner of the house appeared in the doorway. He was truly a giant, and it would have been nothing for him to take all three of them down with a single blow. You don't look like merchants, he grumbled discontentedly. Well, all right, come in. Just don't expect me to treat you like gentlemen. In this house you won't get a crumb or a sip. And absolutely, please promise that you won't breathe a word about what you saw and heard here. All three promised and hurried inside the house. Inside, a luxurious table was set. Delicacies, sweets, fresh fruits, wine. The guests had just settled at the table, but the host behaved completely inappropriately. Without offering them anything, he started to eat and drink. Moreover, addressing the ignorant Jafar, he declared, You're with the mustachioed, and don't think you can take even a sip or eat a crumb. The chest is smug. The next object of his ridicule was the black Masroor. Do you think you can drink wine, colorful debauchee? The bottomless jug. So you miscalculated. When it was the Caliph's turn, he laughed so hard that he even fell on his back. Morning came. Everything had been eaten, and the wine was all gone. And Harun asked the giant, Tell us, dear sir, who are you that you can throw such feasts? Are you? Tell us, dear sir, who are you that you can throw such feasts? Oh, you, the giant shouted, so we didn't understand anything. And already more calmly he added, My name is Bazim, I am a blacksmith. Every day I make a decent profit. 5 silver dinars. But that's after 20 years of work. I spend my nights at a lavish table, and in the morning I go back to the forge. This is my life, and no one will stop me from doing what I want. So, are you going to work soon? The Caliph asked with a threat. Not until I deal with you, bandit. You'll see what I'll do to you when dawn breaks. Harun or Rashid laughed as he got up. We are just foreign merchants. What can we do? I was just joking. After saying goodbye to Bazim, the guests left the house, but they did not forget the insults and humiliations they experienced that night. The Caliph decided that the bold blacksmith should get what he deserves, and in the morning he summoned the chief of the guard. For the next 3 days starting today, I forbid work in the forges. Whoever disobeys will be executed. Poor Bazim, as soon as he heard the bad news, he remembered his nighttime guests. That's just what I needed. In sorrow, cursing his life, the blacksmith went to the bathhouse. What happened? Bazim, the voice of the old friend, the bathhouse attendant Koledes, was heard. The blacksmith shared his sorrows, cursing this worthless life. Don't lose hope, Koledes said, patting his friend on the shoulder. Work with us for 3 days, and then you'll return to your forge. So, instead of hammering, for 3 days, Bazim massaged his clients' legs and rubbed their bodies. Incense. For his daily midday prayer, he received 5 silver coins as before, and walked cheerfully towards home. It turns out that being a bathhouse attendant isn't bad at all, Bazim thought. The work isn't dirty, and the money is the same. Night has fallen. A full moon rose in the sky above the towers of Baghdad. As before, Bazim's windows shone brightly, and the lively singing echoed around the neighborhood. And once again someone knocked on his door. "Ah, there you are!" shouted the blacksmith, letting in his old acquaintances. The wine calmed Bazim's fury, and this time the host invited the guests to the table. Harun al-Rashid remained calm until he found out where Bazim had earned money for another night of feasting. "Do you want to know where the money comes from?" the blacksmith shouted. "So you should know I worked in the baths." "And what if they close the baths too?" the governor asked. "You're interested, huh? Oh, you bird droppings. Get out of my house." The 3 companions put in a lot of effort to calm the furious blacksmith, and only at dawn did they leave his house. To calm the furious blacksmith, and it was only at dawn that they left his house. Harun al-Rashid, impatiently shaking his head. He was making plans on how to punish the dishonest Bazim. That day, barely settling into the royal throne, he issued a decree to close all the baths in Baghdad for 3 days. The townspeople were unhappy, and Bazim was the most outraged of all. He was unfortunate enough to let it slip to the night guests. He felt like the unluckiest man in the city. Now he will have to look for a job again. Bazim spent the whole day going from house to house, but he was turned down everywhere. Rumors were already spreading around the city that he brings bad luck. Exhausted from his search, the blacksmith returned home, and suddenly his gaze fell on a shawl lying in the corner. Deciding that he could easily sell the shawl for 5 dinars, the blacksmith grabbed it and hurried to the market. On the way, he first stopped by the madrasa, where he washed his face and hands and also prayed for the success of his upcoming endeavor. Then, after sprinkling some water on the shawl, he put on his head over the turban so that it covered his back. He was deep in thought about how to sell his goods for the best price. Bazim was standing by the gates of the madrasa when a woman approached him. "Sir, I see you are a messenger from the court and I have a big problem." "What luck? And indeed I have the same shawl as the judges," thought Bazim. And he said out loud, "What trouble has switched over to you? I can help with anything. I want to complain about my husband, the shoemaker. Before the wedding, he promised me 5 dinars, but he hasn't given me a single one yet." The woman started to cry. "Take me to him. He will pay for everything," the blacksmith thundered. "Maybe we should go to the judge for a signature first," the shoemaker's wife timidly suggested. "I can sign all the documents myself." The woman gave Bazim 2 dinars and said, "Take this for your efforts. My husband's workshop is just around the corner. Take this for your efforts. My husband's workshop is just around the corner." Taking the coins, Bazim rushed into the workshop, grabbed the shoemaker, and threatening him with a wooden block, threw him over his shoulder. "What's going on? Where are you dragging me, Mr. Wan?" the shoemaker exclaimed, trembling with fear. "To court." "You didn't give your wife the promised 5 dinars, Bazim stated. "Wait, I'll explain everything right now." "Stop for a minute." The shoemaker started to plead and was hitting the blacksmith on the shoulder. Finally he stopped, set him down on the ground, and glaring threateningly thundered, "Well, speak up quickly." "Listen, I promise. I'll sort everything out with my wife, just don't drag me to court." "And who will pay me for my work?" Bazim asked ominously. "Here, take this as compensation, 3 dinars. "You owe me more," the blacksmith declared, threatening the shoemaker with his finger. However, after receiving the coins, he graciously released his captive, threatening the shoemaker with his finger. However, after receiving the coins, he graciously released his captive. Satisfied, Bazim headed home, stopping by the shop to buy food for the night feast. In the evening, he enjoyed life as usual, as if tomorrow would never come. And on a whim, he wondered if the caliph would now close all the courts, as if tomorrow would never come. If so, he would pay dearly for it. Now Bazim will show this trio. If that's the case, then he'll pay dearly for it. Now Bazim will show this trio. There was very little wine left in the bottle when guests suddenly showed up at Bazim's again. As always, the blacksmith immediately forgot his decision to keep his mouth shut and started mocking the newcomers again. In the end, he let it slip how he had revealed himself as the judge's assistant and how he now intended to make a living. That was more than enough for the caliph. The next day, the first thing he did was to call the Chief Justice of Baghdad and give orders. "I've heard rumors that there are too many assistants in the court who are confusing people. Go and interrogate each one. To those who truly help the judges, add a salary, and order that the impostors be beaten with sticks as a lesson to others." The caliph's decree didn't surprise the judge too much, as similar inspections had been carried out from time to time before, and he hurried to the madrasa where the judge's assistants gathered every morning. That day, Bazim showed up at the assembly. The guards, with sticks and whips, surrounded those, after which the chief judge began to interrogate each one, showing scrutiny. The blacksmith knew that he couldn't escape punishment. The blacksmith, beaten and expelled, knew he had to flee Baghdad quickly. Beaten and expelled from the madrasa, he wandered home. He thought about leaving Baghdad quickly. At home, Bazim found the storage room empty, with nothing for the journey. He was no longer thinking about the 5 dinars, but rather about how to get out of Baghdad as quickly as possible. Finally reaching his home, Bazim peeked into the storage room, but it was empty, so there was nothing to take for the journey. Suddenly, he noticed the scabbard of an old saber on the floor and a club on the wall. It's not much, but it's still a weapon. The blacksmith fastened his belt, tucked the scabbard into it, put a piece of wood inside, grabbed the club, thinking it might come in handy. Now he was ready to leave the city. It's true what they say, man proposes, but God disposes. As he walked through the marketplace, he was so lost in his thoughts that he didn't notice how he ended up in a crowd of onlookers surrounding 2 brawlers who were beating each other up, pulling each other's beards and hair, until blood appeared on their faces. No one in the gathered crowd dared to break them up until a giant appeared, wielding a massive club. Giant. With a raised massive club. The fight immediately stopped. The bullies calmed down and silence fell. And then the owner of the market stepped forward. Allow me to thank you, Chief of Security, for restoring order, and accept these dinars from us. Take the brawlers to the caliph so he can punish them justly. The townspeople think of me as the caliph's guard, Bazim thought. What luck. The blacksmith led the troublemakers to the palace to the real chief of security, Harun. Bazim's height and confident demeanor made an impression on the guards. It seemed like they immediately accepted him as one of their own, even though they had never seen him before, and they let him pass freely to the chief. Probably the chief himself had given him an important task. It seemed like they immediately accepted him as one of their own, even though they had never seen him before, and they let him pass freely to the chief. Probably the chief himself had given him an important task. Life smiled at Bazim again. He forgot his grievances and got ready. Harun al-Rashid waited for night to visit the blacksmith, anticipating how this time he would throw the merchants out of his house. Harun al-Rashid eagerly awaited the night to fall over Baghdad so he could pay a visit to the blacksmith. However, the vizier Jafar and the executioner Masroor began to persuade him, the caliph, it's not worth going to Bazim anymore. His patience must have surely run out after the lesson he was taught. Let's take it with us. 5 stuffed chickens. To win his favor? I want to make sure the blacksmith is upset and hungry, replied the ruler, as if he hadn't heard them at all. You don't argue with the caliph, and the false merchants, leaving the palace at night through a small secret door, set off down the familiar path. As soon as the blacksmith's house came into view, they heard a familiar tune. The companions exchanged puzzled glances. He's incorrigible, Jafar remarked. Now let's find out how he managed to earn today, the caliph exclaimed angrily, quickening his pace. As soon as they knocked on the door, Bazim, as if nothing had happened, stuck his head out of the window and shouted, waving a club. Get out of here while you can, or else I'll teach you a lesson. We came to say goodbye peacefully, said Harun. We're leaving at dawn, so we decided to treat you. The blacksmith, catching the scent of fried stuffed chickens, couldn't find the strength to refuse. Bring them here. He couldn't find the strength to refuse. Bring them here? Envious, breadwinners, eternally hungry? Just know that you won't get anything, he roared from the stairs. I'm not afraid of you, bandits, even if you call upon Allah himself. Now I have a powerful master. The caliph couldn't believe his ears. Bazim considers himself one of his most loyal servants, and in the ruler's mind a plan immediately took shape. The next morning he ordered the head of security to send him 4 fearsome men, among whom was the merchant. What could this mean? Bazim became worried. Why is it so unlucky? However, he could not have imagined it. What Harun is planning? My God, began the Caliph, hiding his face under a shawl so that the blacksmith would not recognize him. I want to assign you an honorable task. Complete it. Prove your loyalty to me and you will be rewarded, but if not, you will lose your head. And if not, you will lose your head. At Harun al-Rashid's signal, 4 bandits were brought into the room, condemned to death for murder. And now show me what you're capable of. Cut off their heads. This is the end for me. Today I will stand before the Lord. Bazim trembled. How can you chop off heads with a piece of wood? Harun, Jafar, and Masrur could barely contain their laughter. When the first 3 bandits were beheaded and their bodies taken away, the Caliph turned to Bazim. Now it's your turn. Let me first tell you our family legend, the blacksmith began. It's about the sword, which has been passed down through generations. This sword itself delivers justice. When it falls upon the neck of the innocent, it turns into a tree. And if a person is guilty, a lightning bolt bursts from its blade and kills him. Well, then, let's take a look at your miracle sword, the Caliph smirked. The blacksmith pulled a wooden stick from its sheath and struck the bandit on the neck. He is innocent. Order his release, the blacksmith shouted and stepped back. Harun relented. The blacksmith shouted and, as if in fear, stepped back. Harun al-Rashid could no longer hold back. He started laughing uncontrollably, and Jafar and Masrur joined in. After laughing, the Caliph finally turned to the blacksmith. Well, Bazim, now I see that you are unbeatable. I appoint you as the commander of the guard.